4 generations. That's right. That's what we're looking at here in Proverbs chapter 30, verses 11 through 14. Now, if you look at the ESV translation, you're not seeing the word generation there, are you? Okay. ESV renders the next verses with a more generic, there are those. But in Hebrew, it's the word generation repeated over and over again. It says, this generation, this generation, this generation, this generation. It's the same word that we find in Deuteronomy 5, 9 through 10, which says, For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands. The thousandth generation is what the word is, of those who love me and keep my commandments. So that's the word generation there. That word is used quite often in the Old Testament to describe that group of people during that time. Usually it's described, those people are alive, and then it says to the third and fourth generation, to the thousandth generation, which that hasn't even happened yet. And then you get to Luke 11, 49 through 50. Jesus uses the word generation to note the group of Jews who were alive at the time of his incarnation. He said, therefore also the wisdom of God said, the wisdom of God has said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and persecute, so that the blood of all the prophets shed from the foundation of the world may be charged against this generation. And who's that generation? Well, it's the generation he's talking to, right? This group of people here. And so you see that that's therefore also the wisdom of God said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and persecute. Who said that? Who's the wisdom of God? Well, it's Jesus. Jesus talking about himself. I said I would send my prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and persecute. So he prophesied that. And then so that the blood of the prophets shed from the foundation of the world may be charged against this generation. He's going to say that all the prophets that were killed is coming down to this one moment. This one moment when you people put the Son of God to death. Pretty harsh, but that's what Jesus said. But that's how he used the word generation. He's saying this group of people here, this people that are all alive at the same time, is a generation, right? However long that generation is debatable and probably changes in the context. But it has to do with a group of people who are alive at the same time. Now that we got that covered, let's move on to the idea of generations that hate and do bad stuff, because that's what this is all about. Agar's going to come up. He's going to say, okay, I praise the Lord. I'm praying for God to help me get rid of the sin. But there's just people here that are just evil. That's all there is to it. This generation is corrupt, deserves death. So the first one he starts off with in verse 11 is the generation of those who hate their parents, right? Those who curse their fathers and do not bless their mothers. And so it says, wisdom has commanded that children are to honor and obey their parents, right? We see that in Exodus 20, Ephesians 6:1, Colossians 3:20. So it's in the Old and New Testament, same exact wording too. Paul brings the law of God. He brings the moral law of God. Do not, honor your father and mother. And he brings that right to the church and says, this is what you should be doing. You should be doing the law of God, one of the 10 commandments. Now, actually, Paul brings 9 of the 10 commandments and puts them back into the church and says, you need to do this. He says, these are not dead. These are still very much alive. The only one he doesn't specifically mention is honoring the Sabbath day. But all the other ones, he says, yeah, you need to be doing this. The moral law of God has not changed. It's the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's not going to change. So you need to do the law of God. And one of those that he mentions is specifically honor your father and mother. And so that's what wisdom has told us, right? Wisdom commanded that we honor our parents. That's what we do. Now, Romans 1:30 tells us that the fool, those with a debased mind, it's the same thing. Those fools are disobedient to their parents. As he says in Romans 1:30, what do all these people do? All these horrible things, they don't love God, but they also don't obey their parents. That's what the wicked generation does. So if there is a generation that's wicked, they don't honor their father. They don't bless their mother. They curse their father, right? They wish ill upon their fathers. Then they're not wishing good things upon their mothers. And so that's the idea here, that these people are fools. They're in rebellion against God. They do not fear the Lord. Paul tells Timothy about this generation in 2 Timothy 3. He says, in the last days that Timothy and we are in now, that's what Paul's talking about when he says last days. He says we will encounter this generation of people here and there that are disobedient to their parents. Timothy was not a part of that generation because of his faith and obedience. See, that's what distinguished Agar. Wasn't part of the generation. He probably lived in that generation, as in that period of time, but he was not a part of that generation, which was those people. That people. There are a people. That's why it's rendered that way. There are those who are clean in their own eyes. There are those people, right? He's talking about that generation of people. But he's not supposed. We use generation as in, got generation X, generation Y. It all depends on when you were born. So we're talking about time periods. But when the Bible talks about generation, it's talking about a group of people. And because all the generation during Moses' time died in the wilderness. Well, did everyone die in the wilderness? Obviously not. But it was all those of that generation, right? All that specific group of people. It says that all the fighting men had to die. All those men who are of fighting age had to die. Now, did all the women have to die? It doesn't say that. So were there old ladies there? Could be. All those who were not of fighting age were still alive, right? What are you going to say that's the generation cut off of time? I think it's because they weren't part of that group, the fighting age. Was Caleb part of that? Yes, he was. Did he survive? Yes, he did. He was not part of that generation because he feared the Lord, and the rest of the fighting men didn't. They were disobedient to the Lord. Caleb and Joshua were not part of that generation because they loved the Lord. See, you're not part of that generation because of your age. You're part of that generation because of whether you disobey or obey. That's what Agar's talking about here. That's the difference in the generations. That's how Jesus used the word generation. That's how he's saying, I will visit. That's what God uses generation in Deuteronomy, right? That he would visit curses upon them to the third and fourth generation. Is it everyone in that generation, everyone alive during that time? No, he's just talking about that specific group of people who hate me. But for those who love me, I'm visiting, kindness and blessings upon them to the thousandth generation. Of those who are obedient to me, of those who are steadfast and show steadfast love towards me, then yeah, they're getting blessings over and over again. I'm going to love them. I'm going to, give them steadfast love. It's not going anywhere. But if they're going to disobey me, they're going to be part of that generation, then that's a problem. So you see, generation is more about not so much time, but it's about people and what you're identifying with. So I can live at a certain time, but not be part of the generation that is evil. And so if you think about it that way, then it kind of changes things, right? Because you get to the next one. What's the next one? Well, we see in verse 12, there is this generation who are clean in their own eyes, but are not washed of their filth. So what's the problem with them? They're self-deceived, right? They think they're clean. Or in other words, they think they're right with God, or at least a good person. And this generation is like the church of Laodicea in Revelation 3:17, which says, "For you say I'm rich, I have prospered, I need nothing," not realizing that you're wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. These people were conceited. They had fooled themselves. They had self-deception. They thought we're good, man. We're clean. We're a church that's following God. He says, no, you're a generation who is poor, blind, and naked. You have nothing. You're lost. You as a church in general are lost. Now, is there some people there that aren't? Sure, there probably were. Obviously, the pastor there was probably not poor, blind, and naked, but the majority of the people probably were. They were part of that generation, that group of people. There are those who think that, hey, I'm clean, I'm good with God, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And really, what you just have done is just deceive yourself, because really you're wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. You got nothing. You don't have no part in this. You think you're saved, you got baptized, right? I'm saved, I'm baptized, I'm in the church. True, those things happen. But guess what? You're poor, blind, and naked, and you're wretched. You have, as Paul told Simon, you have no part in this. You have no part in this, man. You said you believed. You believe some things about Jesus. You believe some things. Yeah, you have belief, right? You had baptism. Great. But you're still unregenerate. You need to be born again, brother. He also says this generation is like the scribes and Pharisees in Jesus' day. So woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. He says, woe to you, curse you. He's pronouncing curses upon the scribes and Pharisees because they're hypocritical. They've made them outward, hey, I'm clean. I'm clean of my filth. I'm good. Look at, I'm keeping all these rules, and that's what makes me clean. Now, there's nothing wrong with keeping rules and doing and keeping rules. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that you never clean the inside. You're not regenerate, right? You don't have a regenerate heart. You're not alive. You're dead in your sin. And so you just clean the outside of the cup, but inside is full of garbage, of nastiness, of greed and self-indulgence. The outside of the cup looks nice. The plate looks good. But inside the cup and on the plate, it's filthy. It's gross. And it really is nasty. I mean, it looks from a distance, looks good, but sorry, it's not. Now, also in the same list in 2 Timothy that Paul mentions being disobedient to parents, he mentions those that have an appearance of godliness but deny its power. So really, Paul here is just quoting what Agar said. Agar saying, hey, this generation's evil, this is what they look like. And Paul says, yep, this is what they look like. We have that same generation today. Agar, thank you. It's the same people. Same people are still around. Those who look like they say, hey, I'm clean. But really on the inside, they're just as filthy as they've always been. The inside's not clean. You have appearance of godliness. You come to church. You got baptized as a believer. You did all these things, right? You did all the things right. But on the inside, you're denying His power. You deny the power of God in your life. Because guess what? You're self-righteous. So the fool is so self-deceived that they think they are morally and spiritually good, but they don't realize that they're still covered in their own filth. Why are they filthy? Because their own filth is on them. The wise realize that they need to be washed before they will be clean. Let's move on to the next one. The generation that is proud. What? We don't know anything about that. Verse 13. There are those, how lofty are their eyes, how high their eyelids lift. Right? He's talking about pride. And speaking of this generation, Matthew Henry said, he speaks of them with amazement at their intolerable pride and insolence. Oh, how lofty are their eyes. With what disdain do they look down upon their neighbors, as not worthy to be set with the dogs of their flock. What a distance do they expect everybody should keep. And when they look upon themselves, how do they strut and vaunt like a peacock, thinking they make themselves illustrious, when really they make themselves ridiculous. That's a perfect description of what's going on here. They're strutting around, looking down upon their eyelids are so high, you're looking at the bottom of their chin. Well, what does Proverbs 16:18 says? Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So all you're doing you're setting yourself up. Your high eyelids are so high, you can't see that you're really falling off a cliff. That's what you're about to do. You're looking up, you're looking down so far upon people that you don't realize, like right below your feet is a bottomless pit that you're about ready to fall into. And if you think about it, we have Pride Month in our culture nowadays. Pride Month is an apt term because this is true. It is all about pride, right? Pride in oneself, and especially in sin, is cause for mockery. The Bible does it all the time. I mean, Agar's mocking mocking the pride. Oh, look at them. They're looking down. Look, oh, how lofty their eyes are. Oh, how high their eyelids. Look at how high their eyelids are. As if to mock them in their snobbery, but they don't even realize it, right? They don't realize it. How high their eyelids lift. There's that sense of mockery there. Look how foolish they look. They look ridiculous. Like, look down, you moron. You're about to die. But look at, they're just strutting around and all their pride. The fool is full of pride. The wise are those who humble themselves. There is such pride, such glitz, such show and pageantry when it comes to Pride Month. It's just all out there. It's just despicable and disgusting, and it's all in your face. And they look down upon those who do not agree with them. Right? Their islands are so high that they don't realize that they're constantly tripping over their own feet because they can't see where they're going. They're so debased, they're so self-deceived that they're constantly tripping over themselves, doing things that are completely absurd and ridiculous. That's what pride is all about. You are so ridiculous. You don't realize it. You're strutting around like a peacock. You think you're something special, but really in the end, you're just like everybody else. And all the things you do to make yourself special is just making you like everyone else. Have pride in something else besides yourself. It's despicable. It's ridiculous. Like Matthew Henry says, you're ridiculous. You think you're making yourself illustrious? You just made yourself a fool. And now you're a source of mockery from those who understand. From those who are wise, they mock you. God mocks you. Because you're trying to mock God, but he won't put up with that. Now the last one here are those who are merciless. This last generation are merciless people. They have no mercy. And so this generation has no mercy upon those who actually really need mercy. They are fools because wisdom warns of the rule of reciprocity over and over again, right? What you sow, you will reap. Do unto others what you have done unto you. That's the same thing. If you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Matthew 6:15. Wisdom says to care for the orphans and the widows. All you have received, all of us have received what we have from the hand of God. To devour what God has given to others for ourselves is like to be like Judas, right? We had no care for the poor, so he helped himself to the money bag. We are to ask for our daily bread, not to seek to exploit others for our own gain, okay? We don't need to do that. That is evil. That is foolish. We don't exploit others to get our own bellies full. Exactly what he's talking about here. Their teeth are swords, fangs are knives. They devour the poor from off the earth. So they're just abusing and misusing the poor to gain from them. Like they have nothing. And then you're just bleeding them dry. That's evil. That is merciless. Have mercy on these people. These are the people you're supposed to have mercy on. Like, not on the rapists, not on the murderers. Don't have mercy on them. Allow them to see justice. And really, it's injustice. Again, like I talked earlier, it's injustice to try to stop justice. That's what injustice is. Mercy does not stop justice. Mercy supports justice. Mercy loves justice. It doesn't short circuit it. It doesn't remove it. So, yeah, we need to be careful about that. Because a lot of people are talking about mercy and justice and all these things today in the church. But then it's like, well, how did you set mercy against justice? If God can have mercy and he can have justice, they have to work together. And if we're going to have mercy and he's called us to have justice and both, then we need to figure out how that works. So, yeah, that's the end of our study for today. Now come back next time and we'll kind of put all these things together and see exactly how we should be living this